This week on the How to Drop Your Friends podcast, we talk about what to do when your friend drops you. Listeners also called in with questions about bike prices, why they're so high, and will they ever go down? And we had a special mystery caller who sounds strangely like GC Performance.
Yeah, my question's for Mr. Outdoor Bros.
He asked our guest this week, Chris Johnston, aka Outdoor Bros, if you couldn't ride Specialized, what would you ride? Let's get into it. All right, we are recording.
Awesome. Welcome. Let's talk about our Strava year and recap for 2 hours.
How was your Strava year?
It was decent. I guess per Strava, I'm down like 20%.
Okay.
Which I think I expected, but yeah, life's just gotten busy. Kids in soccer and stuff like that, and so it's...
What does down 20% look like for you?
7,200 miles.
Oh, man, you destroyed me. Yeah, I think I only did like 4,000 this year.
Oh, really?
I had a really productive like first half of the year, and then I just tried too hard to like on the content side and on the training side, and I came home from like a big trip in the middle of the summer, and I was like, I'm good for a while. Yeah, and I'm just barely starting to get back into it.
How many of those miles were leading up to Europe versus after?
Probably 3,000. No, probably 3,500.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's how that goes.
Yeah. I've ridden, I think like I've averaged 2 hours for the last 2 months.
Really?
2 hours a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So it's been
fair enough.
Dad hours without being a dad.
You're busy. You got this going on. So
yeah, that's the excuse. That's the excuse. Well, thanks for coming all the way up here.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Are you from Southern California?
Yep. So born in Long Beach, grew up inland, lived out there till I was like 18. Lived in South America for a couple years, and then ended up down near the beach. And I've been there for 15 years. Been married for 15 years, so been out there ever since.
What do you like about Southern California?
I think for us, it's just we've established roots here. Like our families are here, and it's just it's kind of home for us. Like we have our routine in our city. We live in Costa Mesa, so it's like we go to the same lunch spot. We see the same people every Saturday, and our kids are in schools that are 3/4 of a mile down the road, and we just have everything here. Like if we want to go skiing and snowboarding, it's a couple hours away. We want to go to the beach, it's 10, 15 minutes away. And if you want to ride bikes, like there's like I think world-class riding like right out of our garages, which is hard to beat. And the weather's obviously pretty good year-round, so
yeah.
It's a little cold in the mornings now, but...
It's so funny. I feel like people always discount whenever we talk about how good riding is in Southern California. Even other Californians, like in Northern California, they're like, you don't know, like we have Mount Tam, we have all... And it's like you do. And the riding is really great up in Northern California.
Yeah.
But Southern California is so underrated. What's your favorite like weekend ride?
So out by us, we kind of have like a loop that we do. We're early morning guys, right? We've got to get kids to school, or we've got to get back early on a Saturday. So we usually meet for like a dawn patrol loop. We'll meet on PCH, go up through like Laguna Canyon, up into Santiago Canyon. There's another canyon in there called Silverado. So if there's extra time, we can do that. It ends up being like a 70-mile loop, and we're typically home by 9, 10 a.m., which is nice.
How early are you starting to do 70 miles and being...
Yeah, so during the summer, like when we're training a bunch, sometimes we're leaving at 4:45, 5 in the morning. So just throwing on lights and going for it. But again, it's like 60 degrees, so it's like nice, and it's...
What time are you waking up?
Yeah, 4:30. Usually like rolling out of bed.
I'm not as committed. I have no excuse. I'm just like, I'll ride at like 9 a.m., and then I wonder why I can't get anything done in the day.
Yeah, I've never like had that luxury of going at 9. For whatever reason, I'm like wired to where like I need to start working at like 9 a.m. And even if I duck out for like a lunch ride for 45 minutes or 60 minutes, getting out at 9 a.m., there's more cars on the road. Like I feel like I need to be at work, like doing something. So for me, it's always been an early morning thing. And, even right now, it's like get up in the morning, go ride for a little bit, back before my kids go to school, help make them breakfast, get them ready for school, and out the door. And that's kind of the morning like grind for me. So,
oh, man, what time do you go to bed?
Usually like 11:30.
How are you alive?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
That's amazing.
I mean, yeah, during the summer, I try to go to bed a little bit earlier if I'm getting up at 4 a.m. Out the door at 5:50, and there's like a group ride that meets at 6:15 in Irvine. Go jump on that group ride, back home by 7:30 or so.
Is it really like all S-Works, like it looks like on your channel in that ride?
I think like our guys that we ride with, I think that's just kind of like the language that everybody speaks. And so inevitably when I started riding with them, I was already riding like an S-Works Venge or something like that. And so they all had Specialized bikes. And so it's kind of like everybody speaks that language. And I do think that Specialized has a stronghold on Orange County in general. So just a lot of guys in group rides are riding tarmacs, and we have like a Specialized concept store. I don't know if they call them concept stores anymore. Right on like 19th and Harbor, which is 2 miles from my house. And those guys they're just good guys there, like good mechanics. They know how to work on the bikes. And so it's an easy, like seamless relationship with them.
It's so nice to have like a good bike shop.
Totally.
So if you could not ride Specialized or ENVE, because I feel like those are the two most common brands on your channel, what bike would you get?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd probably go with something like a Blackheart. Like I really liked ththose bikes. I had a chance to ride that Titanium. I rode the Road AL. I rode the Gravel AL as well. And I just thought they were like really cool. I think the brand is cool. I think a lot of buying a bike and like buying into a brand is kind of identifying with the brand. Mm-hmm. And I think what Blackheart is doing is really cool. So it's not a plug for Blackheart. That's just me having ridden their bikes. I thought they were really cool. And even like some of the marketing stuff they're doing with like, is it Johnston? I think it is. Like, I just think that's really cool. I think that is what cycling needs. I think we need kind of a little bit of like an injection of culture into our sport to maybe move it a little bit away from like the, everybody's pinning a number on to go race. Yeah. It's like, hey, there's enough diversity and a big enough group amongst all of us that we can all be into different things. Not everybody has to go super fast. Like you can have your group that does their thing. And I think that's really cool. So I like what Blackheart's doing. I think they're really cool. And I'd probably go Blackheart.
That's cool. Yeah. Boo rides in the group ride that I go on. Oh, yeah. And then Jess Meany is another cool person that rides Blackheart there. There's a bunch of them. It's funny the crossover between like skaters and cyclists in like the LA scene. Did you skate when you were younger?
I did. So I skated and snowboarded, and I always thought that culture was really cool. So when I started cycling, I feel like I inevitably am like hardwired to still be part of that. Like if you look at who I follow on Instagram, a lot of it's people who still snowboard and people who still skate. Like I was watching like Eric Costin's stuff last night and just some of the things that these guys are doing. And I'm always like, we got to figure out a way to like bring that over into cycling. Yeah. Because I remember when I started, it was like, if you're not riding with like your club jersey that has like 1,000 Hammer logos on it, like you're not cool. And I always thought that was kind of lame. And so when we started, I think that's when we talk about Attacker, like that's where Attacker came in, is I feel like Attacker coming all the way from Australia had really cool kits, and they were like doing something different. It was loud, it was different, and I think that resonated with me. So
yeah. Well, thank you for plugging my own sponsor. That was
there you go, Attacker, Stephen and Greg.
I like the vibe here with cyclists because of that. There's a lot of people. I skated when I was younger. I was horrible at it, and snowboarded, and I was a little better. And it's I don't know. I've thought a lot about it. And I've talked to like some people, some of my friends about it. I have this buddy Dave, and his theory is that like skating on the road, you were like hated, and it was kind of dangerous. And now riding bikes on the road, you're like hated, and it's kind of dangerous. Yep. So it's like the middle-aged version of like being a skater punk, and it's like starting to come along.
For sure. And I think it's gotten a lot cooler, thankfully, over the last few years. I feel like since the pandemic, I think a lot of these people who have like aged out, like we can't all go skate because of just our ankles are going to break and we're going to be sore for weeks. But like we can go ride bikes, and that's a good way to stay healthy and have fun and still have like a group that you can hang with. And
how often do you ride gravel?
I was riding gravel quite a bit. Usually, so we do like a 200-mile race in September. That's a road race that's called Lodoja. Yeah. It goes from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So there's a lot of road riding that leads up to that, to the point that we're like sick of riding on the road after. And then I usually like just throw the road bike on the trainer. And so I think the Tarmac sat on the trainer for almost 2 months. I didn't ride it. And I was just riding like the Crux and riding my Epic Evo.
Is it always kind of seasonal like that for you, or you?
Typically, we'll try to mix it up a little bit, but inevitably we end up back on the road. It's like Tuesdays, we're like doing these hill repeats in Newport Coast. And then on Thursday, we'll do this Coffee Crew group ride that's kind of like an open group ride that everybody does. And then Saturdays are typically long road rides. So maybe on a recovery ride, like a Monday, Wednesday, or a Friday, there's like a gravel ride mixed in, but 75% road, 25% gravel. Hopefully that shifts over the years because I love gravel.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question, but I'm going to kick these guys out of the room.
Go for it. How's the audio and stuff?
It's great.
Decent?
Perfect.
Good?
Yeah. You're doing awesome, man.
Oh, thanks. Going into it, I always know too, like I will record a video and I'm like, oh, dude, I sounded like I was like energetic, and I'll go through the edit. I'm like, oh, I actually sound like I'm
it's
bored.
Crazy, right?
So I have to like up it like 5 notches. So anyways, if I sound like I'm just bored.
No, you're doing really good.
Let me know.
Yeah, I'm kind of like learning. The nice thing about the podcast is like it's long form and the rambling's like kind of good.
I will ramble.
People like to they'll turn it on while they're on the trainer.
Yep.
They like to just like hang out. They're looking for they're like, oh, I like Chris's stuff. I want to spend more time with Chris. And then,
Sure.
So the more rambling, the better. Yeah, man. Okay. So
Yeah.
you really have it dialed in and schedule wise, it sounds like you're like, on this day I do this, on this day I do this.
Yeah.
This and that. Have you always been like that?
I haven't. So when I first started, I was kind of like the classic, like 2-3 weeks on, 1 week just totally blow up everything, and then I'd be like 3 weeks on. But I was really, really inconsistent. And I was doing triathlons back in the day, as everyone I think does, kind of getting into cycling is, they have a buddy who's doing triathlons. Maybe it's not as big now, but when I did it, it was like the thing. Yeah. And so I hired this coach, and it was the first time that I had ever been consistent with my training. And I realized that like consistency was huge. So I think Trainer Road works really, really well for me, is because I can just plug in a plan, I open up an app in the morning, jump on my smart trainer, and like I'm off to the races. So that has helped me be like really, really consistent. And it's kind of a necessity. As my friends have gotten stronger and they've gotten faster, like it sucks to be the guy who gets dropped, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of that like competitive nature in there as well, where it's like I kind of like have to do this and I have to get it done in the morning. So if I don't get it done in the morning, it's not going to happen for the day. So even when I tell myself I'm going to go on a lunch ride, or I'm going to get, I'm going to upload this Trainer Road workout to my Wahoo, or Garmin or whatever, like it rarely happens. And it's definitely not going to happen at night because my kids are home and like we've got stuff to do. Yeah. So that's kind of like my schedule that I've worked out, and it seems to work for me. And I can't function without it. Like I saw that somebody posted something like, why do you ride your bike so much? And it's like, because if I don't, like I go nuts. Mm-hmm. And I would say that is kind of true for me. Like I really feel like I am so much better when I ride my bike. Like I'm sharper mentally, like I'm better professionally, like I just have a better day. So for me, getting up in the morning and, knocking out some miles, whether it's on the trainer or with friends even better, because you can chat and check that social box as well. Yeah. It's like, that's what works for me.
You got me feeling motivated. Like I gotta start getting up in the morning. What you said about like, if you're like, oh, I'll do a ride in the afternoon, it's the biggest lie I tell myself.
Oh, dude, it never happens. Like I want it to happen every single time. It's warmer out. Like I think everybody has this perception that Southern California is like so warm and you guys can train year round. Like it was 45 degrees this morning, and 45 degrees may not sound like it's really cold to some people out there. I'm sure people will comment and say, hey, that's not cold at all. Yeah. But when it's 45 degrees and the sun is still down and you're riding at 20, 25 miles an hour in a group, like that's pretty cold. And so I'll oftentimes tell myself like, oh, I'm going to go in the afternoon. It just never happens. Like as soon as you open up your phone and you start checking emails and like work things, and there's just things that come up, and then it gets windy and like, I don't know. So for me, it has to be the morning. And if it doesn't happen in the morning, there's probably like a 25% chance it's going to happen.
All right. You convinced me. Let's hop over to some calls from listeners.
Cool.
So if this is your first time listening or watching the podcast, what happens is you call in, you leave a message with your question or cycling conundrum, and then each week the guest and I call you back and answer your question live. So who knows what's going to happen? Who knows what questions there are? Here we go. First one.
All right. Hey, what's up? Stuart Anderson calling. I'm calling in reference to Chris Johnston. I had a question for him about long endurance events, specifically loaded ya. I'd love to know more about his fueling strategy, his hydration strategy, pacing strategy, and everything that he does to train for over a year-long period for a 200-mile race. I'd love to know his insights on how he races and how he prepares. Thanks.
Oh, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
You messaged me about Loaded once.
Yeah.
And I dismissed it pretty quickly. I took a look at it. I'm like, that is intense. It looks fun at the end.
It's fun at the end. It's fun for the first like 100 miles or so.
Oh, man.
But
a 200-mile race.
Yeah.
The longest ride I did was 190 miles. And I went really, really slow.
This is Stuart.
Hey, Stuart, you called into the How to Drop Your Friends podcast to ask Chris Johnston about crazy long rides and how to train for them. I'm here. Chris is here. And we're going to answer your question.
What up?
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. What's going on, guys?
What's going on? Looks like you're calling from the 801. Is that Utah? Is that Salt Lake?
It is Salt Lake City, Utah. You bet.
Oh, dude, grab me some So Delicious cookies, please. Okay, so your question was about how to train for, what is it, Loaded Ya?
Yeah, Loaded Ya.
Cool.
One of the longest, hardest single-day races in America, and I know Chris has, put a lot of time in on the bike, dialed his equipment and nutrition, and it's tough to put that day together. So I don't know, just looking for tips, tricks, stuff that he wouldn't dare race without. He's a master at that day, so love to hear about it.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Great question.
So I think the biggest thing is just getting a huge base, kind of starting at the beginning of the year. It's 200 miles is so crazy because you have to train for it like all year long. It's not something you can just kind of show up for in like April, May. As I found out this year with kids in soccer and stuff like that, it seemed like it was a little bit tricky to train early in the year. So I would say you kind of have to start in January and really kind of work up to peaking in September for that race. And so that's a lot of hours. I mean, we're probably talking 12 to 15 hours a week on the bike. Some of those days are easy. Some of those days are hard. And I'd say make sure that you have a good group of people who you can train with who have kind of similar goals, which I know is a little bit tough. I know some guys are racing. Some guys are just going for like that benchmark 10-hour mark on that race. And then some guys are just kind of doing it as like a bucket list thing. But for me, thankfully, I found a good group who's always trying to win their age group. I mean, Loaded is unique, of course, because you're racing against the 50 guys who you start with. So you just kind of start in waves. I think you leave every like 4 to 6 minutes. And so those are the people who you compete against. Typically, it's like, 35 plus, 45 plus, 55 plus. I would say train a ton. Try to get in like those long Saturday rides when you can. Sometimes you're doing like 2-a-days. And then dial in your nutrition, because I think you live and die by your nutrition on that race. And so for me, that's been like a mix of Scratch Labs, aminos. I did First Endurance EFS Pro, I think it was this year. I've done Scratches, carbohydrate mix as well. I do Optimums, like a little bit of amino energy for some caffeine, and then add some like salt sticks or salt tablets in there as well. And I think throughout the year, you figure out kind of where your breaking points are. So if you're starting to cramp or you're starting to break at 70, 80 miles, kind of note that, after a Saturday ride, and then figure out where you need to tweak your nutrition. And hopefully you figure that out in, April, May, and then you can push through that plateau. And then maybe you hit another one at like 120 miles and you can work through that one. And then you get to a point where you have a pretty dialed in system over 200 miles. And in my case, like I basically just want water for like the last 40 miles because I'm so sick of drinking sports drinks. But I think that's kind of the biggest thing. So
how many hours is the race for you?
Yeah, so I think the fastest I've done it is like 9:23.
Wow.
And that's with like two quick stops, maybe like 30 to 45 second stops.
Yeah.
And then I've had a couple years where I've been like 10, 15 or so.
That's incredible.
Yeah, you're moving at a pretty good clip.
What's like the elevation on that?
8,800 feet, 8,500 feet.
Wow.
And most of that's in the first 100 miles. So they're like 3 big climbs. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have like this long, it seems like it's a descent into Jackson Hole, but it actually like climbs up a little bit more as well. So yeah, it's fun.
Stuart, are you preparing for a race? I'm curious, what's the impetus behind this question?
Yeah, me and my wife will race Leadville Mountain Bike 100 this August.
There you go.
Just a casual little race.
Very similar, though, to Lodija with the climbing. Elevation will be a little different, but, those long endurance events, kind of reached that point in my life where that's what I enjoy more doing, and it's tough to get all those things dialed in for those long ones.
Yeah, that's crazy. So
that's awesome.
Have you done Leadville before, or is this your first time?
Not my first time. I've done it 2 times before, but my wife's got a big goal for that big belt buckle. So we're training a little different this year, training together, and we're going to race together. So a lot, we've already started. She hired a coach, and like a lot of preparation is going to go into that big day. So,
dude, you're committed. That's great.
That's so exciting. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling in, Stuart. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yep.
All right, buddy. See ya.
See ya.
Man. Dude, Leadville is one of those ones that is like on the bucket list, but I don't know if I ever actually want to do it. It just seems like it's so hard. We're at sea level-ish right now. Maybe we're at like 200 feet. But thinking of racing up to like 14,000 feet, it's very difficult for folks like us to train for that. So.
Yeah. I went to Bolivia last year, and I was shocked at how much elevation it was horrible. Yeah. We started at, I think we started at like 4,000 feet. We worked our way up to 15,000 feet. And as soon as I hit 12, I was seeing stars in my eyes. Yeah. My power just dropped precipitously.
Yep.
It was crazy. I felt like I was like doing threshold and I was below my zone 2.
Yeah.
It got so bad that like by the time I was around like 13,000, 14,000 feet, I had to stop every few minutes just to like until the stars disappeared out of my eyes and the tingling in my fingers was gone. And then I would go like another 5 minutes and then I would stop. And it was just, so I see Leadville and I'm like, man, you just, and I guess you just have to like be at altitude for a while. One of the guys that came on that trip to Bolivia, he lives in the UK, he lives in London, and he went to like a sports training center, did the training in the altitude chamber, all of that.
Really?
And he did better than all of us with the altitude, but even for him, it's tough. It's just like altitude is just something that's...
It's brutal. I mean, I think the closest thing that we have here are just obviously local mountains. I don't know. You climb more local mountains here. We get up to what, 7,500 feet, 8,000 feet?
Yeah. If you go over into like on the Angels Crest Highway, you go up to Mount Wilson, you can kind of start getting some elevation, but still it's...
Yeah, that's not that, like we're still talking about 6,000 more feet.
Yeah. When I left,
which is crazy.
La Paz and flew to fly back to LA, I had a layover in Bogota.
Okay.
La Paz is like almost 12,000 feet. Bogota, the airport, I think is like 7,500, 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
The air felt so thick and luxurious. I couldn't believe it. Like I felt like I was in a soup.
Yeah.
That experience scared me off of like any high altitude adventures for a while.
Totally.
I'm not far enough away to forget what it was like.
When I lived in Peru, I spent like a bunch of time in Lima, and then we would take a flight and go to Cusco. And I think Cusco's like 10,000 feet. Yeah. So like one Monday you'd be playing soccer at sea level, and then the next Monday you'd be playing at 10,000 feet. And it's like all of a sudden you can't run, you can't do anything, and it takes so long to acclimate to that. So
it's nice when it goes the other way.
Totally.
I went to the University of Utah, and then I moved to Ohio. And so I went, like, what's the elevation in Salt Lake? I don't know.
5,600 feet, 4,500 feet, something like that?
My first week in Ohio, I felt like I could run for hours. And we'd play ultimate frisbee, and I could literally just, like, run the entire game without stopping, like a full-out sprint.
Yeah, we have friends that come from out of town, and, like, we'll be doing our normal local climbs, and we're talking, like, 1,000 feet of elevation gain per lap. So, like, literally from sea level up to 1,000 feet. And they come from, again, Salt Lake area, and they're training up there in those mountains at 7,500 feet, 8,500 feet. And they come down here, and they're like, oh, this is easy.
It's not fair.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
Yep. And that's the challenge with that Lodija race, too, is that you have all these guys who live in, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming. Mm-hmm. So they all race up there at elevation, and then, us guys from down here come from sea level, and it's like, yeah, they've got an advantage. So
it's like when teams go to Denver to play basketball or football or whatever.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. You're not selling me on Lodija with
I know. Sorry. I'm not good. Sorry, Lodija folks. It's fun, though. I promise. It's really fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's funny how, like, for cycling, like, I have a buddy, he's always like, cool hobby, man. Like, when we're in the middle of, like, a crazy ride. Like, this is great. I can't believe this is what we do for fun.
Right. Yeah, we do this. Yeah.
My name is Matthew, and I have one question. So as we know, over the last, 3, 4, 5 years, bikes have gone exponentially more expensive year by year, the S-Works Epic is on the mountain bike side, but now used to be like $12K, and now the Epic 8 is like $14.5. Road bikes have gone from, $14K to $15K to $16K. And then this is different because it's Colnago, but, Colnago's new bike is $17K. When you think like all this is going to kind of median off and kind of hit the apex of brands are going to realize just kind of that apex of why aren't we selling these top end bikes, and kind of when do you think that price range is going to be, or do you think just kind of us cyclists are going to kind of keep on buying bikes that cost as much as cars and then eventually going to cost as much as a house? Thank you.
All right, let's call Matthew back. Bikes are getting expensive.
They're super expensive.
I feel so insulated because I'm very lucky that I get bikes to ride. I don't know if I'd be cycling if I wasn't an influencer, it's just so pricey.
Yeah, there's ways to work around it though. You can always buy used.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of what you have to do. Every time somebody asks me, that's where I point them.
That's always been my strategy, is like buy used and sell it a year later or something.
Hello?
Hey, is this Matthew?
Yes, sir, it is.
Hey, Matthew, this is Mitch from How to Drop Your Friends. I'm here with Chris Johnston, also known as Outdoor Bros. You asked us about rising bike prices. We're here to talk about it.
Sweet.
Let's chat, dude. So what's up? Prices are going up. You want to get a new bike?
No, not exactly. I just spent $10K on a bike, but basically
Wait, what'd you get?
I'm wondering. I got a Cervelo R5.
Okay, nice. Great choice. Do you have buyer's remorse now? Now that you're looking at all these new bikes?
Yes, sir.
I get it.
So I was wondering, like, over the last like 3, 4, 5 years, as we know, like not just road bikes, but mountain bikes too, just parts like have all grows exponentially in price. And it seems like, us cyclists haven't really stopped buying those. When do you think, like, I can't imagine 5, 6, 7 years down the road where the highest end road bike is 19, 20K, and that's kind of the norm. And I was just wondering, like, when do you think that kind of apex of price will be between like cyclists just being like, okay, like maybe like I shouldn't buy that bike, and like bike brands just kind of level off on their rising prices?
Good question. I think there's always actually going to be a demand for those high-end bikes. I mean, inevitably, we just saw the Colnago Y1 RS launch. I think the frame set is like $6,750. And so, yeah, you're well into $15,000 for a bike. And I think that there are going to be people who are going to be fighting to buy that bike. And I think it's going to continue as long as people are willing to buy them. So I think cycling inevitably is like this expensive sport, right? I always tell my wife, like, it's not as expensive as cars, thankfully, but it's probably like the next worst thing. And I think that we're going to see those prices continue to rise. I'm actually surprised that they haven't risen much more than they have since the pandemic. But I think that for us normal folks, I think the answer is going to be to buy used. I mean, typically when you see these bikes that sell for $15,000, you can pick them up for half that 2-3 years later, sometimes less. I mean, you can go pick up a Tarmac or a Cervelo R5, like something used in like the $4,000 or $5,000 range, something that would have cost $15,000 or $14,000 a couple of years ago, and it has like 98% of the technology that we have, in the latest and greatest bikes. So I think it's going to be a struggle. I think for us normal folks, buy used, ride it for a year or two, sell it for pretty close to what you paid for it. That's always been my motto with bikes.
The argument I always hear for, I guess, in favor of why bikes cost so much is comparing to like F1. It's like you can't go out and drive an F1 car.
Yeah.
You can't drive the same cars that the people on the grid are driving. But when it comes to bikes, you can buy the same bike that Tade and Jonas are riding. And I wonder if in the future that's not going to be the case anymore. Like in theory, you could, but bikes will get so expensive that the bikes the pros are riding all of a sudden aren't the bikes that the rest of us are riding.
Yeah, I don't know. That'll be interesting.
It kind of breaks my heart to think about that future. I do like the idea that I can't use the bike as an excuse because I'm riding the same thing that somebody who's infinitely stronger and more talented than I am is riding. I don't know, Matthew, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I think there's going to be I feel like you're right. I feel like eventually, like the pros are going to be riding just bikes that nobody else can afford, and really nobody's going to have them. But I feel like there's going to be a point where like bikes are just going to get so expensive that, as we even saw, like the Pros Closet just went bankrupt because they bought all these bikes during the pandemic when bike prices shot up. And then after the pandemic, they were holding bikes and they were selling them for as much as they paid for it, if not less, which of course sent them into bankruptcy. But I think just overall, I think I could be wrong, proven wrong, but I feel like there's eventually going to be a point where like people aren't going to spend, I feel like something like an Element Ace just as a part, just like a Wahoo Element Ace and 6-7 years is going to be $1,000. And I feel like there's just going to be a time where people just aren't going to buy those new parts. And I feel like these bike brands are going to be somewhat struggling and realizing that, well, they can't charge that much, and maybe putting a lower spec on it or something like that. I'm not really sure.
I hope you're right, because that would be beneficial for all of us, right? Like if bikes were now, $12,000, $13,000, $10,000, whatever it is, and we can pick them up on the used market, like that would be amazing. So I hope you're right, Matthew.
Yeah. It's a very like somber topic. It makes it feel like we're at a funeral or something. I'm hoping that it does kind of like stabilize at some point. I don't know what the answer is. And honestly, I'm in a really fortunate situation making content that I get to ride all of these amazing bikes that I would never buy myself. Chris and I were talking about this while we were dialing your number. I think I've forgotten a bit of like what the sting to the wallet feels like when you buy a bike. And besides, this is just the bike, right? Like cycling in general, you got to buy a kit. Yeah. You got to buy a helmet. You got to buy sunglasses. You got your shoes. You got to buy your fuel. Yep. you can easily, I mean, a rookie mistake I made when I bought my first like nice road bike was I spent my whole like allotted budget on the bike, not realizing how many accessories I needed to buy.
That's why they say you can never get out of the sport because it's like too embarrassing to have to sell everything, right?
It's true. It's true. I literally started my YouTube channel to justify the amount of money I was spending to my wife.
Yep. It's a write-off, right?
Yeah, so maybe that's the solution. We all have to become content creators, and then the world really will end.
So that's it, Matthew. You just have to start a YouTube channel, and then you can buy whatever bike that you want.
And that's why you call into this podcast, for really good, solid solutions.
Yes, sir. Well, I work at a bike shop, so that bike I just bought, I did not spend that much. So you could get a job at a bike shop too, and that helps a lot. But
That's
I was
true. That's
I
right.
was just wondering, just because every year, you're looking at I was looking at some the Cannondale market, and just from last year's bikes and the new bikes, I mean, it's $1,000 difference for all the specs, just MSRP. So it was just curious. I looked at a graph too, and it was just rising. So I just didn't know when that was going to median off.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything, right? Because in that bike, you've got an increased frame price, components are more expensive. I mean, the new SRAM group set's like $4,000. Wheels are $3,000 now. And again, I'm talking like top end spec if we're talking like $15,000 bikes. But yeah, it all adds up as everybody adds 10%. Now that whole package is that much more. So
What you got any exciting rides you're going to take your R5 on?
No, not really. Just base season, just long hours on the bike. But I was also, this is another question. Do you think like it's kind of going to drift away new cyclists from getting into the sport when they go to their local bike shop and they're like, whoa, $4,000 for a bike that was like $2,800 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's going to turn some people off to the sport, but I also believe that like everyone has their thing, right? Like for some people, it's going and spending gobs of money on their house or cars or whatever. And for some people, it's like they want to spend money on a sport. And so instead of spending whatever, $50 or $100, I don't know how much gym memberships are now, but they will spend that amount of money on a bike over a period of time, and maybe they sell it in 2 or 3 years or something like that. I think it's going to turn some people off. I think some people are going to figure out how to do it. And then again, I go back to like the used market. I think that same bike you walk into the shops, that's $4,000 now. Somebody who is just getting into the sport has really no reason to go spend $4,000 or $5,000 on a bike. I think they can hop on Craigslist and maybe risk their life for some like back alley deal to get that same bike for $500 or $800, a couple years later or something like that. So yeah, I think that's where the opportunity is.
What do you think about like the Chinese bike market?
I was just listening to the Nero show with Joe from China Cycling on the way here. I think they are actually kind of taking that low end market and really capitalizing on it. If you don't care about which brand bike that you have, I think that's a great option. My challenge with those, and I'm sure they're great, is that I typically go through bikes every couple years. And so when I go to resell those, it's always a little bit more difficult to explain like, oh, this is kind of the same as this bike, but it's like the China brand. And so that's where I struggle with those, where I feel like if you make the initial investment, you can kind of sell it on the back end and you're still going to lose about the same amount of money, or you're going to maybe break even if you've bought smart. So
yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years if that market continues to increase in like the Western world, and if those brands gain notoriety, and then does that put pressure on existing bike brands? We're way out of my own expertise here, by the way. I'm a YouTuber, not an economist. So, but basic supply and demand, right? So it'll be interesting to kind of see how that changes.
I agree.
Yeah. How much cyclists will pay to not get dropped on the Sunday group ride?
That is the real question, right? That's the heart of it. And unfortunately, for all of us, I think it's an infinite amount. So we're really only hurting each other.
That's it. Yeah. We need to stop the problem.
Thanks for calling in, Matthew.
Thanks, Matthew.
Sweet. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate you, dude.
Yeah, of course. Have a good one.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you. You too.
A great question.
That
I
was
have
great.
No real answer for.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think that episode of the Nero Show is very interesting. How they talk about like this third wave of kind of these Chinese brand bikes that are coming in, or Asia made bikes. I've seen a few guys like riding along on a group ride, and somebody's got like the $1,200 ENVE one-piece bar, the $600 Roval one-piece bar, and then this guy over here has like the one from Panda Podium that's like half the price. It's like a $300 bar, and it looks fantastic. So I think if you want to get a deal, I think you can find it.
I think it's a little bit of the bubble that I live in LA. There are a lot of other like content creator cyclists, a lot of people that work at bike shops, the people that ride the best bikes that there are. And then I have like a couple of friends that do ride like a wind space. I have a friend that like he custom builds his bikes, getting pieces from all over the internet. Yep. And they're two of the strongest riders I know. one of them, Luke, he's like grabbing KOMs from Phil Guyman. So it's like,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter what the brand is. But as a vain person, it does matter what the brand is.
Totally. And we're probably going to get roasted in the comments for this entire conversation right here.
Of course.
But I do think that it's really only so much the bike.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's where I think we have to be realistic about what it is that we actually need. Do we all need to be riding the same bike as Tade, Adam Yates?
We do.
We definitely. Oh, we do. See, Mitch says we do. But like realistically, we want to be, and we want to kind of like attach ourselves to that from a branding perspective. But really, like, are we that much faster? Are we that much faster going from like a 2018, you name it, Cannondale bike to like the latest and greatest Super 6 Evo Lab 71 that's 5 times the price? We're probably not that much faster. And there's always someone on every single group ride that proves that point every week. Yeah. And I'm always like, hey, dude, hats off to you, man. I wish I were you.
Yeah, there's always that. There's always a Kevin.
For sure, there's always a Kevin.
You know Kevin.
Yep.
Well, since we're talking about kind of like bikes right now, I'm curious, road bike with gravel tires or gravel bike with road tires?
Road bike with gravel tires or gravel bike with road tires? I would say gravel bike with road tires.
Why?
I think when you take a road bike and you max out the tire clearance, it just feels really, really weird. And that's coming from a guy who's riding like 32 millimeter tires on the tarmac right now. I just... that's fine. But if I were to like go any further, I just feel like it changes the handling dynamics. You're kind of pushing the envelope in terms of tire clearance. I'm a big believer that like tires are everything, and choosing the right tire that works for you and where you live and the terrain and the width and all that stuff. That is probably the number one most important decision before you ever go spend gobs of money on a bike. Figure out which tires you're going to ride, because that I think is the biggest impact that you can make for the least amount of money. It's the least sexy thing, but it is what it is. And I've just found that when you take a gravel bike and you put road tires on it, again, it's not ideal, but I think the opposite is definitely less ideal. I'd take a do-it-all bike or a gravel bike. I throw some 32s or 35s on it. And I mean, you can still be Kevin. I don't know Kevin, but you can still be Kevin.
Kevin's legendary.
And then you need just one bike. And I think that's the thing too, is we get into this like, okay, you need a road bike for this, and you need a gravel bike, and you need a mountain bike. Not really. I mean, if you need just one bike, you can just have that kind of middle ground bike, and then you don't need the other ones, and you can make it work across the board.
You've been talking to my wife. You just need one bike. What are your thoughts on the mountain bike tires led by Dylan Johnston?
Dude, I love those videos. I think it's cool that they're pushing the envelope in that direction. I had a friend, Dan, who was like, hey, I've got an ENVE Mog. I've been putting these, I think it was Aspens or something like that, like 29 by 2.25 inch tires on there. He's like, it's amazing. It's so fast. Like, all right, I've got this Crux. I'm going to try it. So I had some 2-inch mountain bike tires. I like trimmed the tread off, meticulously cut them off with the razor. And it was a really cool experience. I don't know if it's like my everyday setup. I think that 45 millimeter is like the sweet spot for me. But I do think that it's really, really cool. But then I go to like, I'd rather just be on my mountain bike. Yeah. So it's that gray area. A gravel bike in itself, I think, is inherently in that gray area of like, it's kind of a road bike and it's kind of a mountain bike. And when you start to get to the outer edges of the gravel bike, I think after a few rides, you just kind of say like, I'd rather be on my road bike, or I'd rather just be on my mountain bike, because it's nearly as fast, but then you have additional capabilities.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I've been borrowing this mountain bike from BMC. It's a 4-stroke.
Sweet.
It's great. It's a lot of fun. And I'm kind of like, do I want a gravel bike, or should I just do road and this mountain bike? Yeah. The thing with mountain biking I found is that I have to travel to a place to ride the mountain bike.
Yep.
Like I could ride it on the road and eventually get like, there's some trails like 40 minutes on the road bike and like almost an hour on the mountain bike to get over there. Or if I have the gravel bike, then it's closer to the like road bike like commute. Yeah. And then once I'm on the trails, it's not as fun. So there's always there's this trade-off, and I'm struggling. I'm trying to decide.
But could you not take the mountain bike, pump your tires up to 35, 40 PSI, maybe that's too high, and have a decent ride on road, and then you could, decrease the tire pressure as soon as you hit the gravel or dirt or whatever.
Yeah.
And then figure out a way to add a little bit of air.
That's too reasonable, Chris. That's too reasonable.
That's like logical. That's what I say. If you can have one bike, you get a gravel bike. If you can have two, it's a road bike and a mountain bike. And then you just figure out how to close the gap in between them.
And what's the third bike? The gravel bike or
third bike's
another road
bike?
Nah, gravel bike.
That's a good question. That's a good question. Yeah, probably a gravel bike. You never have too many bikes.
That's true. All right, let's go to another call.
Hey guys, this is John on a mobile calling from Heber City, Utah. Quick question. What do you do when your friend that you introduced into cycling starts beating your times. They start beating to the top of the hill. They even take the occasional city limit sprint. Do you claim some sort of portion in their successes, take some pride, or do you immediately block them on all platforms and avoid ever riding with them again? Thanks, guys. I'll hang up and listen.
Sounds like
great question.
Sounds like he already knows the answer.
Yeah. You just need to confirm what he already knows.
John.
Hey, John. I just have to offer my condolences. You called into the How to Drop Your Friends podcast. Your friend is dropping you. It's the worst possible scenario, but we're going to help you out.
What's up, John?
Hey, guys.
How are you,
Thanks
buddy?
for calling me back. You're right. It is a worst-case scenario.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how long have you no longer been friends with this person?
It's going on 3 months now,
Okay.
actually.
Okay. So it's still fresh.
He doesn't know yet.
No restraining order yet.
I've had excuses
Uh-huh.
as to why I haven't gotten back on the bike with him.
Yeah.
But eventually he's going to start getting suspicious that we are actually no longer.
Yeah. Of course. Let's diagnose the problem. So did he upgrade his equipment?
He did.
Okay.
What's he riding?
He's riding an SL8.
He's riding an SL8. That has been, I tell you what, that's been the bike of the day. It keeps coming up. Anything else? He's improved his fitness too?
His fitness has improved. He's dropped weight. I am pretty sure he's doping. I can't prove it, but he has a suspicious cancer doctor. I shouldn't say suspicious. He's a real cancer doctor. But I have my suspicions that he's on something else.
Well, unfortunately, this is a very common tale. Somebody buys an SL8.
Yeah.
They lose weight mysteriously faster.
Yep. I think you're doing the right things. I think you start to block him across all social media channels, start to ghost him, join different groups.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say you slash his tires or anything like that, but maybe spread some tacks out on the road where he typically rides.
Now,
Any
I
advantage?
don't have an SL8. How easy is it to take the seat post out so you could fill the frame with, hypothetically lead or a similar
hard.
substance?
Not hard at all. Yeah, typical Home Depot run, and you can get everything that you need. Just number 5 Allen.
Okay. Now the trick is going to be you have to make sure that whatever you put in is going to stay in place, because it's going to be a dead giveaway if there's like noise of things moving around in the frame. So what you want to do is put the lead in and then use some of that expanding foam. That's going to lock it in there for you, and you can add an easy 5-10 pounds.
Yep.
To that frame.
But I probably need to do it slowly in increments. Don't you think?
Yeah, has he learned how that's a really good point. It's the frog in the boiling water situation, right? Let me tell you, John, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
You've thought this through, haven't you, John?
If his bike goes from 15 pounds to 22 pounds, he's going to notice. But if it goes from 15 to 16...
Now what about, have you tried like killing him with kindness in the sense that maybe you drop off a gift basket full of donuts, full of, zebra popcorn from Costco. It's on sale right now. You can drop off, cookies. I know cookies are big out there. Those kinds of things will weigh him down equally as much, and he won't really notice it. So you might try those tactics as well.
Wow, I like that. That was a good pun there.
I like it. I haven't tried that.
And I hate to resort to drastic measures, but have you considered like improving your own fitness or upgrading your bike?
I haven't stooped that low yet. No.
But what bike are you riding now, John?
I'm riding an SL7.
What color is it?
It is black.
Is it gloss black and white?
Gloss.
Yeah, that's about the best bike in the world that you can get. Yeah, limited edition. Very good.
What happened to your original bike?
I got this off a shady character on the corner of Salt Lake City. So
right behind the swig. You gotta watch out for those characters.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Oh man, John, what's your 2025 look like? What are you looking forward to riding next year or this year? When this is released, it's this 2025 will be this year. So
I didn't get into Steamboat gravel, SBT gravel.
Probably good for your SL7.
That, but also a little relieved. So I think I'm going to be, going back to the drawing board and seeing how I can't improve my own fitness so that I can take my rightful place at the top of the peloton here on the local group ride, social rides.
Okay. Chris, what do you think John should do?
I think, John, if you're calling from the 801, it looks like, I would say that you sign up for a race called Lotoja and you just fully commit to that right now. And you start a training plan January 1st, and you just do it. Find some suckers to race with you. Tell them it's going to be a good time, and just go all in.
Well, that one's a given. I am returning for my 21st Lotoja.
21st.
Whether it's a good showing, that's TBD. But I will be there.
What's your most memorable experience from Lotoja? 21 times. Man.
Probably pacing my dad to his first sub-10 Lotoja. That was probably my highlight, to be honest.
That's awesome.
I've been on a couple podiums, but the one I remember the most is helping somebody else reach their goal.
And that shows us, why you are a good person and your friend just really isn't. How dare they drop you when you're the kind of person that pulls other people across the line, helps them meet their goals.
They don't know what they're missing, John.
John, I'm so sorry.
Dude, it's not.
I spent years waiting for this person. Out of the kindness of my heart. And now he has to wait for me. I don't appreciate it at all.
Does this person have initials that we could talk about on air?
Probably best not to, but yes, it's NL.
Okay. Got it.
Ned Landers.
Yep.
I know him. He's a horrible person.
Nailed it.
We're here for you, John.
Well, John, thanks for calling in. I really hope that this issue is resolved, and you have our hearts, our minds, and our thoughts are with you.
Appreciate the call back, guys, and the advice. I'm gonna take it to heart.
Thanks for calling.
Box of tissues coming your way, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, John.
Guys.
All right. See ya.
Talk to you. See ya.
Poor John.
Tough luck, man. We've all had that situation.
Kevin,
what do you do? Find a new friend group.
It's the only possible solution.
You don't want to buy an SL8. That's you don't do that.
It is interesting as I think this is why I started mountain biking a little bit. Is it's really exciting when you start road cycling and you're progressing, and then you hit a kind of a plateau. Those newbie gains are gone. Mm-hmm. You're kind of at this point, like, what do I do now? And then somebody else. I had this with EJ Trains, actually.
Okay.
When EJ Trains started, I imagine like a lot of listeners and viewers, who EJ Trains is. If not, he was an editor for NorCal Cycling. I think his first FTP test was like 180 or something like that. And so it's like, okay, it's great first FTP test.
Yeah.
At the time, I was stronger than him. And then his second FTP test was like 300 watts. And that was just devastating.
Dude. What the heck, EJ?
How do you
How
jump
could you do that
high?
to Mitch?
How could he?
Yeah.
AJ.
Happens to the best of us.
Happens to the best of us. So, sorry, John. Were you competitive growing up?
I played hockey a little bit, and then I got into it was kind of like the action sports height, late 90s, early 2000. And so I stopped doing all of that and started like skateboarding, wakeboarding, and snowboarding. And so kind of grew up in that, where it's like a little bit less competitive, but a little bit more of like your own style. And I wouldn't consider myself super competitive until I got a bike. And now I feel like I'm like hyper competitive, maybe not verbally, but I think when you're chasing somebody on a climb, or like we all do it, right? You're riding down the road and you see somebody that's like 500 yards away and you're like, all right, I'm going to catch that guy.
Yeah.
So I think inevitably there's this competitive spirit that a lot of us have. I think the bike kind of brings that out of us in a good way, in a probably healthy way. I guess I'm pretty competitive now on the bike. Yeah.
Yeah. I find it's like, as long as my fitness is similar, there comes a point where it's like, they are so much stronger than me.
Yeah.
All competitiveness vanishes.
Yep.
It's amazing how like complacent I can become. As soon as I find out the person I'm riding with wasn't even trying while I was like dying.
Oh, it's brutal. And I think that's kind of like where there has to be this unique mix of people who you ride with. Because you've got to all be fairly similarly, at the same kind of power, right? And you've got to be able to get up climbs at the same rate. Because if not, there's just like too big of a gap and it becomes unfun for everybody all around. And I think finding that group is super, super difficult. And I think we all kind of ebb and flow in different places of that group throughout the year. But yeah, it's tough.
That's a really good point. I mean, we're joking about John's experience, but it will affect how you're enjoying your ride.
Totally. And like so much of riding bikes is social. At least for me, it is. Like I'm not a guy who goes out and like hangs out with the boys on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Like for me, riding bikes in the morning is like where I get my social interaction, because after that, I'm like at work, hanging with my family. If I can get that done in the morning, that's great. But if now all of a sudden my friends are faster than me, like, we're not chatting about like what's going on here and how so-and-so's doing. And so you like remove that social aspect of it, and it's kind of a bummer.
So if you have a friend that you really enjoy riding with, and let's say the tables are turned, you're now dropping them.
Yep.
Do you continue to build your fitness?
It depends. It depends on what you're after. If you have a race on the calendar or some big event that you're training for, I think there needs to be kind of a mutual understanding that that takes precedent.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that it's unreasonable to get to the top of a climb, circle back down, and ride up with your buddy. And maybe that's a little bit of extra credit on your part. I think that's kind of the way to do it.
I mean, that's the nice thing to do. But to be that buddy when somebody rolls down and then they climb up with you and you're just like,
I know.
It's hard. I mean, but it's,
what else can you do?
You know? Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the way to do it. But I've been on both sides of that, and it's tough. And yeah, I've been there where the guy, like, his buddy like puts his hand on your back and like pushes you up the hill. And it's like kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it's also like, you just feel terrible.
Exactly.
I'm nothing, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's good to be the friend who drops, and it's good to be the friend who does the dropping.
Yeah. And I think, again, going back to the whole trainer road deal that I do, like that is where, for me, that's been huge, is just being able to wake up, have a consistent plan. And that's what kind of keeps me going with my friends. Without that, like, I'd be a total mess.
How long did you ride before you started like training religiously?
So I started riding probably 12 years ago. And I don't think I started training religiously until probably 2016.
Okay.
So I was, probably 30 or so at the time. And I had some friends who were racing that Lodoja race. And then they're like, oh, come race this thing. It's 200 miles. It'd be so fun. I'm like, that sounds like the worst day ever. Like, I was riding like 20 miles on a Saturday, and I'd get home and like, super stoked, right? When I started kind of really training, and then bought like a used Wahoo kicker off of a friend, and then figured out a training plan where I think it was Zwift at first or something like that. Then I realized that I could actually train, and I was super efficient with my time. And again, I just felt better. Like if I trained in the morning, I felt better in the afternoon. In the evening, I felt like I was like a better husband, a better father, a better friend, like more efficient. And so then it just kind of, snowballed from there. And now it's like I just can't, live without it. So yeah, I'd say probably 2016 is when it started.
What's your favorite like exercise to do? Favorite session?
For recovery rides. No, I really love like the really hard intervals, like that are, I don't know what you call them, like sweet spot, that are probably like 105% of FTP, 115, and then they kind of drop down and they undulate, and then you have a recovery period. I don't know what exactly they're called, but those are probably my favorites because they feel the best, and I feel like so accomplished afterwards. Like I'll walk into the house and I'll chat with my wife, and I'm like, oh, I just did like the hardest workout, where your legs have that like tingling in them for the rest of the day, but it's like a good tingling.
Yeah.
And you're like texting your buddies of like, oh man, I just did this workout. It was terrible, And it's, you're all sharing in the misery of this training plan, but you're also like, oh crap, like my buddy just did this for 90 minutes and I only went 60. So he's going to be faster than me on Saturday. And, all these things. But yeah, I love interval workouts. I love them and I hate them. It's a love-hate relationship, but man, it's just so good.
I love a good like threshold workout, like 4 by 10 minute threshold when I'm like fit, when I'm towards the end of like a training block. So that threshold is probably not my threshold anymore, which I guess is kind of like the sweet spot.
Totally.
The one that I love, but like just destroys me are any like VO2 max intervals.
Oh yeah.
Especially when my coach prescribes like 1 minute VO2 max intervals and I just have to empty the tank.
Those are great
for a minute.
They're
great.
Those?
But the rest of the day, it's crazy. I am fried like mentally because I find like by the end of those, let's say I'm doing like 6 of those or 7 of those, by interval 5 or 6, the amount of like mental energy that I have to like put out to be able to just empty the tank.
Yeah.
I come home and that's like, I'm done for the day. But it feels like when you do it and you finish every prescribed interval and you gave it your all, that feeling of accomplishment is amazing.
Dude, they're so awesome.
And then I'm just on the couch the rest of the day.
Right. Yeah, that's like, it's a trade-off,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, my question's for Mr. Outdoor Bros. He seems to have a pretty good grasp on all-around riding, mountain bike, gravel, and road. And he definitely seems to favor Specialized. I would like to know if there's any other company that he would ever make the switch to for the full lineup, road bike, gravel bike, and mountain bike. If there's a Cervelo, a Trek, if he would dump the whole Specialized line and go to something else, who would it be and why?
Nice. I like
This
this.
call is from an anonymous person. Bye.
Well, this anonymous person who we definitely don't know who it is.
Never heard that voice.
For some reason, I think his name might. He just feels like a Grant to me.
Yeah, he does.
Well, we talked about Blackheart, but this is good. This is what's a brand that has the full lineup.
Yeah.
Has everything. All right, let's call him back.
Cool.
That is a good question. What brands does he carry? I know he has Specialized.
He's got Specialized.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, anonymous person who we definitely don't know who you are. This is Mitch from How to Drop Your Friends, and I'm here with Chris, a.k.a. Outdoor Bros. You asked him a horrible question. Would he leave Specialized, and who would he leave it for? Also, why do you sound like GC Performance?
That sounds very familiar,
No,
sir.
I have a cold right now, so I just sound more nasally than normal.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think
It's definitely
I
not
can
GC
like
Performance.
picture this voice. It's like he's like in a dark room when he's like lit by a computer screen and he's like leaking the latest info. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
it's,
yeah. So I got all the bicycle industry after me. They're all head on me right now.
so we got you covered, buddy. Okay, so your question is, if I didn't ride Specialized, who would I ride?
Yeah, like why the have you always been a Specialized guy, or I always wondered because I always find it curious for the people who stay inside the ecosystem if it's just because of the brand or you like their products, but there's a bunch of other companies out there.
Yeah,
Why Specialized?
This is a good question, and it's one that I used to get. I probably still get roasted in the comments for it, but everybody like, "Oh, you're the secret Specialized guy. You know, you're like a special ambassador."
Yeah.
Number one, I'm not a Specialized ambassador. I never have been. I've reached out to them several times to get new bikes, and I've basically gotten ghosted every single time. So there's a shop down the street from me. And I also think if I can like take a step back, one of the things that I think a lot of folks don't realize is that when you start a YouTube channel, like no one is sending you bikes, no one's sending you parts, no one's sending you anything. And so essentially you're just talking about what you have. And so I happened to have, I think at the time, Tarmac SL7. And so like I was trying to maximize that. It was like Tarmac versus this and Tarmac versus that. And what's it like with these wheels and these tires? And so that's kind of how the Specialized thing came about. Then the Crux came to fruition, and I didn't realize there was this whole like do-it-all bike kind of segment of the market. And then I really just basically milked that bike for everything that it was worth. And I think it's a fantastic bike. So there's not been like a real, hey, the Specialized is like behind me kind of whispering in my ear. Never happened.
Sure.
No, I swear.
Sure.
Gosh, I wish.
From the guy who films with an S-Works box behind him all the time.
So that's another one. I had to throw the S-Works box away. That was actually there. So there's a forklift that's typically behind me. And there was like a supplies cart right behind that. So I just stacked like the S-Works box there to like block the cart because it looked messy. But then everyone's like, "Oh, dude, you're just like, it's product placement. You just put the box there." That box actually came from a bike that I bought my wife. It was like a used Specialized chisel from somebody on Pink Bike for like $500, and they sent it in that box. And so the box just kind of lived there for a while.
wow.
So, anyways, yeah, you're going way back. Thank you, Grant.
Well, Chris, before you answer, I want to hear it. Grant, what bike brand do you think Chris should be on? And what's your pitch?
I don't have a think. Like, I always find it interesting, like, for the people who stay in the ecosystem and don't branch out. I mean, I'm in the industry, so I sell a lot of Specialized, and a lot of my customers are returning and upgrading from the same brand because they usually have a good experience with it. But, like, he definitely seems like he could definitely be on, like, a survival aspect of it. Like, because I know he also rides his Epic Evo, I think, as well. So he has a good grasp on, like, road, gravel, and mountain. So it'll need to be a brand that covers all those, and Cervelo has, pretty good bikes. The road bikes, they have a good gravel, the Aspero, and then also they have their mountain bike, which I don't know too much about, but it seems like it'll hit all his category check marks.
So Mitch kind of asked me a little bit earlier about this, and I told him Blackheart, because I think Blackheart, as you know, Grant, is a great company. I really like what they're doing. I like the culture. I like the brand. I kind of like what it represents. I think it's cool that it's fairly local here in California. As far as I know, they don't have a mountain bike, so there would be a gap to fill there. So in that case, if we had to go all encompassing, yeah, maybe a Cervelo. Like, I think the S5 is always a bike that has intrigued me. I think aero bikes are really cool if we talk about like aero versus lightweight. Being here where there's, kind of minimal hills, but a lot of flats and rolling hills, I think that a Cervelo S5 would be really, really fun. I guess they have a mountain bike. I haven't seen too many of them out there, but that'd be a really fun brand to kind of explore. They're actually right down the street. They're like 20 minutes away from me, so I should probably figure out how to knock on that door and make it happen. But yeah, so Blackheart, Cervelo. Obviously, I think ENVE makes a great product as well. So a lot of great bikes out there.
Yeah, And he does a good job. And funny enough that you guys are filming today and everything like that, and I got literally in the stand right now a Crux that I'm transferring over and making a 2x build with 730C tires. I'm building for a customer today. So
wow, a 2x on a Crux.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Inspired by. You would be surprised, Chris, how many customers come into my store and say, "Have you seen the Crux 2x builds?" And it's always cool to get the YouTube culture out there. They show me their videos and everything, man.
That's not me, buddy. That's the algorithm. They got them.
No, it's great, man. It's always fun to hear that type of stuff. I like to hear that it's getting back and getting around to people, and it's inspiring people for new builds. It's really
I appreciate that, man. It's super cool. Like, I will run across somebody who's on a Crux, and like we'll kind of start chatting, you know, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you know, you're this guy," and it's always fun. Like, I genuinely enjoy like riding with people and meeting people and just asking them. Like, I'm a curious kind of person. Like, if you ever ride with me and you're on a new bike, like, it's probably annoying because I'm like, "Hey, 10 miles in, I'm like, what do you think?" 20 miles in, like, "Oh, what do you think?" Like, what about when we were climbing here? You know, so I always like to pick people's brains because I just have one opinion and I have found something that kind of works for me, but I always like to hear what works for everybody else. So yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
On that note, Grant, what do you think the best all around bike right now is?
Oh, dude, you were setting me up for a home run swing. I mean, I'm very biased, obviously, because I ride an SL8, but I think, and this is just me speaking out loud, I think the S-Works SL8 checks off a lot of boxes, and you can go off of their wind tunnel tests, and also you have independent parties running independent tests for like a Tour magazine as well. But it's one of the bikes that I've ridden that it seems to check off. I'm getting older, as I have not realized this. I'm 33 now, and I have back issues, but it's one of the bikes that definitely made me feel more comfortable on the bike. And then also they say that it's claimed to be more faster than the Venge. It's crazy lightweight. It's very capable. I mean, I've had so many customers kind of fish around, and that's the best thing about my job is that I have customers who experiment with an Athos and like, "Oh, I love how comfortable this bike is. I love how lightweight it is." I'm like, "Oh, then you should try Tarmac." And like, it's the exact same comfort I got from the Athos, but just with a little bit more punching power. And then you typically see, and this is again just me seeing what I'm seeing in the industry, a ton of companies that always aim to say that they go, "Oh, well, this bike is lighter than the Tarmac SL8. It's more air than the Tarmac SL8. It's just it tested fast this way." And they're always comparing to Specialized, and that's why our store has always done so well with them. They're a company that will literally drive people into your store, and not a lot of brands do that. They do a lot of innovating, they do a lot of branding and a lot of marketing, but their product does do a really good job, and it lives up to the hype too.
So let me get this straight. You called in.
I know.
You said, "Chris, how do we get you off Specialized?" And then I ask you, "What's the best all around bike right now?" And you're like, "Specialized." Are you trying to slow Chris down?
I know. No. I'm always curious to see, like Chris is. I'm a nerd. We're grown men riding bicycles at the end of the day, and I'm a nerd to find out why people ride the bikes they do and why they chose Specialized. And I'm a fan of every bike. I've said this in my channel. Like I have really good friends of mine that I would love to sell them a bike, but they're like, "Hey, the Trek Madone just checked off these boxes and I liked it better." I'm like, I think the Trek Madone looks sick. So I don't have any kind of issues when people ride other bikes. I just like to know how they, same with Chris, how they feel, how they like them, and yeah.
I have two comments on that. I think that is very important. Like, I don't think anybody should really care what everybody else rides. Like, I think there is some kind of a narrative out there that like if you ride a certain bike or don't ride a certain bike that like you should be like shamed for the brand of bike. I think that's so ridiculous. So if there are guys out there who are like bashing people because they ride a certain bike or it's not top tier, like who cares? We're all just riding bikes, right? So Grant, here's my question for you. Would you trade your SL8, which I've seen a million times, I've seen your discount codes, link Grant GC Performance 10. Would you trade that for the new Colnago Y1 RS?
This is a good question.
Dude, I'm a sucker for aero bikes. 100%. Like you said, I've grown up on the Venge. That was like, I remember when the first Venge came out, and that's the only bike I rode up until they stopped using them. I used the Tarmac S6 a little bit, but that bike, it looks futuristic. Two, it looks industry forward. Obviously, it's going to benefit me too, but it's such a cool looking bike. I think they did a really good job. And people are always going to say, they're taking bits and pieces off the S5, they're taking bits and pieces off an old Kestrel. I mean, if it's working for a company and they're doing the data for them, they're showing good aerodynamics, like, why not take the best of everything and make a super bike?
Yep. Well, because all bikes always look very different, and they're all completely unique.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying.
We had that past 3 years where everything looks like everything.
That's I think the problem that I've had a little bit with like the innovation over the last 3 years is like dare I say, like everyone has kind of copied the SL7. Again, that's not a specialized back comment. That is the reality. Like you look at all of them and they all have a similar shape. So thank goodness that Colnago has kind of come along and like pushed the envelope a little bit. And hopefully that technology kind of trickles down into what we're riding over the next couple of years. Because it's not going to be the bike for everybody, but it's cool. We don't all need Tade's bike, but it's kind of nice to get some
I'll say this.
from
I'm a huge fan of proprietary. People think because I own a bike shop, I'm a huge fan of just like companies trying their own thing and sticking by and say, hey, we did this because we believe this is the best, and I like proprietary tech. The downside of it is that I am a bike shop owner / worker. Well, my father owns the store, but he's not there anymore, but kind of the gist of it. But I hate working on proprietary stuff. So as much as people are like, oh, you just like the proprietary because it's going to keep you in business for longer, the Venge Vise, I like shrivel up whenever I see someone bringing that out for work for a headset adjustment.
Oh, for sure.
It's a pain in the ass.
Bike.
Yes. I had the Venge Vise and the rim brake version. I want to change up my stem mill to half-day job. I was like, it's ridiculous.
Yep.
Whoa.
So, but I do love the proprietary stuff on the bikes. I think it's really cool.
Cool. Love it.
Grant, thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Grant.
You are a man of contradictions. I'm trying to figure out. You're I love the proprietary stuff. I hate working on it. Chris, get off Specialized. I love Specialized. I love it, man. You just say what we all think.
Man.
Yeah. No, we all are.
I'm a conflict.
Like
I'll say this much. I'll let you go real quick before I cut you off. I'm sorry. Just since doing YouTube, I have been conflicted by so many other views that like it's even like stopped me from selling stuff in my store. I'm like, I like this bike, but I'm like, I've seen other stuff that's like kind of better price point, and like I want to just make sure that the ecosystem of the bicycle customers are happy, and hopefully it returns them into my store later on.
I think that comes through in your content. I think your stuff is really fun to watch. You're really entertaining. You come through super genuine. Big fan.
Grant, do you have any breaking news here for Mitch that we can include in the podcast?
Oh, yeah.
What's the latest release? What have you been reading on Reddit?
Well, on Reddit, dude, I haven't been on Reddit since like freaking wow.
Oh no!
And we have dropped Grant from the show. How to drop your friends? We've just dropped
I think
Grant.
whatever he was about to tell us, they cut the call.
They cut it.
That's your conspiracy theory this
Either
week.
that or he's on Cricket Wireless. Who knows?
Oh man. I wanted to hear what he
I know.
had to say. Grant.
That was great. Thank you, Grant.
That was really good. It was fun to talk with him. I hope you didn't think we hung up on him. Grant, we didn't hang up on you.
Yeah, Grant, we didn't hang up on you, buddy.
So you got loaded, Joe?
Yep.
Any other plans for 2025?
No, not really. A loaded is one that will always be on the calendar just because it's like kind of a family affair. Like we try to go out a couple days before, get ready, do the race, and then we try to spend a couple days in Jackson Hole afterwards. You know, I realized like with having kids and stuff, there's not a ton of time to get out to like all the big Saturday rides or the big events. That's just kind of the reality of the chapter of life that I'm in. So as much as I'd love to do like, BWR, which is an hour away, Whiskey Tango, Fondo, I think it's called, Phil Guyman's event. Like all of those all sound great, but it's like you got kids soccer on Saturday or going out and like doing a gravel race that I'm going to, kind of finish and have fun and whatnot. I always have to kind of focus on family. So for me, it's, just whatever I can squeeze in. And a lot of that is going to be early morning, riding with buddies, trying to get as many miles as possible, trying to be probably more healthy. There were like some goals that I had for next year. It's just trying to get healthier, get a little bit leaner, and hopefully make up for like a little bit less training that way and kind of hack it a little bit. If something comes up, like I'm totally open to it. I can try to, finagle things, but.
Did anybody in your family ride besides you? Your kids, your wife?
My mom rides a little bit.
Mom?
She's gotten into it. She's got the bug, which is really fun. My kids have learned how to ride bikes this last year, which has been amazing.
Oh. Did you do training wheels or like the balance bike?
So we did the balance bike for a little while. It did training wheels for a while. And then we had this trip planned to Yosemite during the summer. And we're like, dude, our kids need to ride bikes. Like if you've ever been to Yosemite, the valley floor is like pancake flat. It's like the best place ever to ride bikes. We typically camp on the valley floor and you can ride bikes to like, the lakes and the streams and the general store and all these things. So we're like, hey, we need to get our kids riding bikes. So we just like pulled off the training wheels, said, all right, guys, we're doing this. And just running down the street, holding the seat. And they just kind of figured it out. So they ride bikes. They're 7 and 9. So they're still pretty young, but like picked up my daughter yesterday from school on a bike and rode home and she just freaking loves it. It's so fun. So
awesome.
They've kind of caught that vision that riding bikes is like this portal to getting places faster and seeing a lot of cool things. And so that's, one of the things I'm excited to share with them as time goes on.
That's so cool to see, like the like early memories of bikes being made. I get caught up in the training. I get caught up in like what event or ride am I doing, and it's fun to see people that are just like starting out, and they're just like, it's really fun to just like have that, I don't know, the sensation of riding the bike. You're going faster than you can run, and it's easier, and the wind's blowing through your hair, and
it's cool. Like strip all the data away, get rid of your bike computer. Like how often do we just go for a ride like just for fun? But just like enjoy it because we don't have something on the calendar. What do when we do? Like it's so nice, And so it's kind of cool to see that through their eyes.
All right. Well, on that altruistic note, let's go to cycling court. This is the last segment of the podcast. You're a judge. There's your gavel. I'm going to ask you a controversial cycling question, and you have to come to a verdict that all of the cycling world will abide by. So the case brought before you today, one must die, gravel or road?
Road.
Road dies.
Road dies.
Why?
Because I think gravel, it's going back to what we were just talking about, I think it's more fun. I think it's safer. I think it's more fun. I'm a guy who likes to get out kind of into nature and stuff. And I feel like road is easier because you can leave out of your garage. And yes, you could do that on a gravel bike too, but you've got to ride 10 miles to get to dirt and then 4 miles on dirt and then 10 miles back home. But gravel to me is infinitely more enjoyable. And it's just fun to be away from cars. It's fun to just get away from all of the noise, just kind of enjoy, the beauty that's around us.
Well, somebody tell Tade, because Outdoor Bros just killed the Tour de France. It's not happening this year.
We're going to do more stage, whatever that was.
Better get ready for Unbound. Chris, thanks for coming on. What do you got going on? Where should people find you?
Instagram at Outdoor Bros, YouTube, same handle. And give me a shout, shoot me a message. Love to interact and chat. And
great. Thanks for coming. It was great having you on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mitch.
Oh man, what a fun episode. Chris lives down in like Orange County, so I actually that was my first time meeting him, but it was a real pleasure to hang out with him. Didn't get to go on a ride. I wish we could have gone on a ride, but we shot this like right as the holidays were in full swing, so I didn't really have time for that, but hopefully we'll be able to do that sometime. I'm kind of playing around with this idea of like a YouTuber invitational where I invite a bunch of cycling YouTubers. Maybe we all rent a house in Malibu or something, and we hang out and ride for a week. Maybe we'll do some like little races or competitions or something. So this is a pipe dream. This is not in the works yet, but it's something I would like to do. I think I just got to find the sponsors, like a way to finance it. But I think it'd be cool because not only would I get to hang out with people, but there'd be some good content I can make. And then everybody that comes to this little invitational could also make content. So it'd be a lot of good stuff for all of you. Anyways, that's something on my mind. Last week I did a live stream. You can go check that out if you want. It was like 100K subscriber Q&A live stream. It was a lot of fun hanging out with all of you and answering questions. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well. Other than that, I got to get back on my bike and start training before I go to Hawaii with Phil in like 2.5 weeks. I'm not really ready. And I may already be having nightmares. See you later.